This is the hidden reason Pan Am collapsed and why one of the most famous airlines in history was already in deep trouble long before its final flight in 1991. Most people remember the glamour and the disasters, but the real story was a structural weakness that kept getting worse until there was no way back. Pan Am is still one of the most recognizable names aviation ever produced. The blue globe logo, the Clipper identity, the Boeing 747, and the image of elegant international travel have outlived the airline itself. Yet, the company behind that image did not fail overnight, and it didn't disappear because of one event. Its decline took years, and the warning signs were there long before the end. The story began in 1927 when Pan Am launched with mail flights between Key West, Florida and Havana, Cuba. That first route became America's first scheduled international flight, which meant the company entered aviation history almost immediately. From day one, Pan Am stood apart from domestic carriers because it was built around overseas ambition rather than local routes. Juan Trippe helped drive that expansion, and under his leadership, the airline spread through the Caribbean, Latin America, and far beyond. Flying boats, Clipper aircraft, and distant destinations turned Pan Am into something larger than a transport company. It became a symbol of modern travel. Growth continued through the 1930s, and in 1935, the airline became the first to fly across the Pacific to China. That achievement strengthened its reputation as a company willing to attempt routes others had not yet mastered. Pan Am also became associated with long-range aviation weather services, air radio navigation, and early airport-to-plane air traffic control systems, which meant its influence reached far beyond ticket sales. After World War II, competition increased as names like TWA and United grew stronger. None of that stopped Pan Am from expanding further. More aircraft joined the fleet, more routes were added, and the airline continued selling an image of quality and comfort tied to international travel. During the early 1950s, the company formally adopted the name Pan American World Airways. Even the name sounded grand, and that fit the public image perfectly. Pan Am no longer looked like a carrier serving routes. It looked like an institution connected to the wider world. That changed again in October 1958, when Pan Am introduced overseas Boeing 707 service. Jet travel changed expectations quickly because flights were faster, travel times dropped, and modern air travel suddenly felt like the future. Pan Am stood at the front of that shift. The company reached another milestone on January 22, 1970, when the Boeing 747 entered commercial service with Pan Am. Few aircraft have ever become as famous as the jumbo jet, and once again, Pan Am had attached itself to a defining moment in aviation history. This was the high point. In 1970 alone, Pan Am flew 11 million passengers to 86 countries, an extraordinary network for any airline of the era. Its slogan captured the confidence of the moment, the world's most experienced airline. From the outside, everything looked strong. Inside the business, a serious weakness had already taken shape. Pan Am built a global empire, but it lacked a strong domestic route network inside the United States. That sounds technical, yet it became one of the biggest reasons the company could not survive. Prestige could attract attention, but a route map still had to work. Large airlines need more than long-haul flights. They need travelers from smaller cities feeding into major hubs, filling seats on international departures, and keeping routes profitable throughout the year. Pan Am had the glamorous ocean-crossing flights, but it did not control the same domestic support system many rivals depended on. For a time, that weakness stayed partly hidden because the industry operated under a more regulated structure. Competition looked different, route access looked different, and the old model still functioned. What nobody expected was how quickly that environment would change. In 1978, US airline deregulation reshaped the market. Airlines now faced tougher competition and had to become more efficient, more aggressive, and better connected. Carriers with broad domestic systems suddenly held a major advantage because they could funnel passengers into their international networks far more effectively. Pan Am still had prestige, history, and name recognition. The problem was that prestige does not replace infrastructure. An airline built for one era now had to survive in another. Management recognized the issue and moved to solve it. In January 1980, Pan Am completed its acquisition of National Airlines in a deal reported at $437 million. The logic was easy to understand. Buy domestic routes, feed passengers into international gateways, and close the gap with competitors. The result was the opposite. National's route structure did not properly feed Pan Am's major international gateways like New York and Los Angeles. Instead of slotting neatly into the company, the merger brought fleet mismatches, cultural issues, and higher costs. Within a year of the purchase, Pan Am reportedly lost $18.9 million. That deal matters because it was meant to be the fix. Instead, it added pressure to a company already carrying too much of it. The airline industry had also been rattled by the 1973 to 1974 oil embargo. Fuel costs matter enormously in aviation, and sharp increases can damage profits with startling speed. Every airline felt that pressure, but Pan Am's model left it exposed in particular ways. The company had invested heavily in large, long-haul aircraft, including the Boeing 747. Those aircraft became icons, yet they also represented expensive commitments in a world where fuel prices and demand could shift quickly. A famous fleet does not always mean a profitable one. By the early 1980s, Pan Am faced a network problem, merger costs, intense competition, and exposure to outside economic shocks. Yet, to the public, the airline still looked polished and powerful. That contrast became one of the defining features of the company's decline. Passengers still saw a legendary brand connected to global travel. Inside the business, management faced rising pressure and fewer good options. And this is where the next phase began. During the 1980s, Pan Am started selling valuable assets. In April 1985, the airline agreed to sell its Pacific division to United Airlines for $750 million. That brought in badly needed cash, but it also meant giving up important routes across the Pacific, routes that once helped define Pan Am's global reach. Asset sales often create temporary relief while weakening the future. Bills get paid, lenders calm down, and time is bought, but the company becomes smaller each time. Pan Am kept operating, though each rescue left less of the airline behind. More pieces followed. In October 1990, Pan Am agreed to sell valuable London routes to United for $400 million. Those routes were prized positions in one of the world's most important markets, so the money helped immediately while the long-term damage deepened. By this stage, Pan Am was no longer simply shrinking. It was being dismantled in public. Then came the event many people know best. On December 21st, 1988, Pan Am Flight 103 was bombed over Lockerbie, Scotland. 270 people were killed, including 243 passengers, 16 crew members, and 11 people on the ground. The human tragedy was immense, and the reputational damage was severe. Yet, this is where the simplified version of the Pan Am story misses the bigger picture. Lockerbie was devastating, but it did not create all of Pan Am's problems. By then, the airline had already been weakened by structural issues, debt, fuel shocks, competition, and years of asset sales. That distinction matters because strong companies can sometimes survive crises. Companies already under strain often cannot. Pan Am entered its final years carrying problems that had never been fully solved. The brand still meant something, but meaning and money are not the same thing. The end arrived quickly. On January 8, 1991, Pan Am filed for bankruptcy protection. Even then, there was one more attempt to preserve what remained. Delta Airlines bought Pan Am's European routes and Northeast Shuttle for about $460 million. There was still a plan for a smaller Pan Am to continue operating, but the losses were already too severe to reverse. Near the end, the airline was reportedly losing about $3 million per day. That figure explains how little room remained. No quick turnaround, no last-minute route shuffle, and no famous logo could solve losses on that scale. On December 4th, 1991, Pan Am ceased operations. A company founded in 1927, one that helped shape international aviation, was gone. Strangely, the story did not end there. Some brands vanish when the company disappears. Pan Am became even more legendary after it was gone. Its logo, uniforms, posters, aircraft names, and image of glamorous travel continued through nostalgia and licensing. In some ways, the myth grew after the business ended. Even today, the name still carries weight. Pan Am Flight Academy continues operating and announced an acquisition of Alliance Aviation in January 2026. The brand also reappeared in 2025 through a luxury private air journey called Tracing the Transatlantic. It used a 50-seat Boeing 757 with pricing around $59,950 per person. That was not the return of the original airline, but it showed how powerful the name remains decades later. And that's why Pan Am still fascinates people. It represented an era when flying felt glamorous, when distance seemed to shrink, and when aviation carried a sense of occasion that many travelers still miss. So what was the hidden reason Pan Am collapsed? It was not one crash, one recession, or one bad year. The deeper problem was that Pan Am built a famous global empire without the strong domestic foundation needed to compete in a changing airline industry. Deregulation exposed that weakness. The national airlines deal added new burdens. Asset sales bought time while reducing strength, and later crises struck a company that was already vulnerable. That is the real Pan Am story, not simply the fall of a famous airline, but the slow unraveling of a giant whose image stayed powerful even as the business underneath it gave way. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more aviation stories, forgotten industry secrets, and the real reasons iconic aviation companies rose, fell, or changed forever. Let me know in the comments which airline we should cover next.